Hi, welcome to looking at the Song of Solomon today. We're going to look at three verses in chapter 7, verses 11 to 13. I think of this as the romantic getaway passage. It's all spoken by the woman, and here's what she says. Come, my beloved, let us go out into the country. Let us spend the night in the villages. Let us rise early and go to the vineyards. Let us see whether the vine has budded and its blossoms have opened, and whether the pomegranates have bloomed. There I will give you my love. The mandrakes have given forth fragrance, and over our doors are all choice fruits, both new and old, which I have saved up for you, my beloved. All right, what I'm going to do is look at the text again for just a couple of minutes, and then we're going to look at 5 things to notice from this, and then we'll look at what does that mean for our relationship with God. So, first of all, this is about a romantic getaway. She says, there I will give you my love. She means, of course, that at that point we will get together physically and it will be like a day or a night of romance, or maybe even a weekend or a week or something. So that's at the heart of all this. Notice some of the wording here. She says at the beginning, come, my beloved, let us go out into the country. So they're in the city. She's wanting to get away to the country. When she says, let us see whether the vine is budded and its blossoms have opened and whether the pomegranates have bloomed, she's repeating what I think the man said back in chapter 6. He said, I went out to see if all these things had happened, and before I knew it, suddenly my soul or my desire set me over the chariots of my people, or maybe in the chariots of my people, or whatever else that meant. But here she echoes that and says, let's go. Let's go out and see what spring is up to. Let's go out and see what we see in the countryside. But let's go out to the country and do it. And I've prepared a place for you. And there I will give you my love. There, where we're private, intimate, there I'm yours. Third, notice she says the mandrakes have given forth fragrance. A mandrake was supposed to be a kind of a romantic fruit, a fruit that would inspire sexual passion. And it doesn't matter whether or not there's any special powers to these fruits. What matters is that, I think it's a fruit, I'm not completely sure, but to these things, mandrakes, what matters is that it represents romance. It would be like our decorating a room with roses or something like that. Over our doors are all choice fruits, both new and old, which I've saved up for you. She's saved up all these things to make it a special time and place. All right, so now let's talk about 5 things to notice about this romantic getaway. Number 1 is that the woman takes the initiative. This is kind of interesting because most of the time through the book of the Song of Solomon, it's been the man taking the initiative. He said, I love you, I want you, and she has sometimes been slow to respond, and sometimes she said, yes, I respond, that's fine. But here's a song in which the woman takes the initiative. Now, I don't know whether, again, this is all one plot and this is the same woman as before, or whether this is a different song with a different woman, but she takes the initiative here. She says, let's go out in the country. I've prepared all this place for you. I've prepared this time for you, and there I will give you my love. Come, my beloved, let us go out into the country. Let's spend the night in the villages. Let's rise early, go to the vineyards. She's got the whole agenda mapped out. She says there, and then is what she means also, I will give you my love. I have all these new and old fruits saved up. I've got it all decorated. It will all be set up for us. I've saved it all up for you, my beloved. Second, the chronology. I used to wonder why it says in the second line, let us spend the night in the villages, if then the next morning she says, there I will give you my love. I don't think to spend the night in the villages here, I'm not sure it matters a lot here. I don't think to spend the night in the villages here is part of the romantic getaway. I'm not sure she means let's spend the night together. I think she just basically means let's go out into the country so that we're all ready, so that in the morning we don't have to take a long trip to get somewhere. We'll just be right on the spot, and then we're ready for our day together. And we're going to go out into the gardens, and at that point, at that place, with everything decorated, with the whole place set up, the whole time set up, that's where we will have our union. That's where we'll have our getaway together, our rendezvous. So that's the chronology here, again, is one of preparation, of slow buildup and preparing, and there's no rush here. There's a specific time and place she's aiming everything at. Notice the space. This is a very space-centered passage. It's all about the place. Let's go out in the country. First of all, she says, not here, not in the palace, if this is Solomon, not in the city, not wherever we are, out in the country. And we're going to spend the night there in advance so that we'll be ready to get up early and go to the vineyards. And then there's this place that he's already mentioned, the vine budding, the blossoms opening, the pomegranates blooming. He's already mentioned going down there and being struck by it. And she says, let's go there. And then she says, there I will give you my love. And I didn't include the verse here, but then that second part of the passage where she says, and there'll be mandrakes and fruits hung everywhere, and it'll be all set up for this. So it's very space centric. It's very much about the place. Fourth, notice the let us see. I don't want to overemphasize this. It's a little tiny thing, but it is there. She says, let us see whether the vine is budded and the blossoms have opened. So she's not saying, it's not so much like, I know exactly what will happen in every place. We've got it all planned out so it's got to be perfect. And if anything goes wrong, it'll throw us off. It's got to be this way. That's not what she's saying. She's saying there's a place where we're sort of opening ourselves up to see what it's about, see what will happen, to see what the time will be like. We're just going to discover together what's there. The let us see is kind of an invitation to discover together what the future holds, to discover together what this place holds, to discover together what their love will look like. So she's sort of not just saying, let's see whether the vine is budded. She's saying, let's see whether the relationship between us has blossomed. And she's expecting it will have. She knows it will have. But she's inviting him to discover with her this sort of idea of discovery and openness to the future. And finally, she says, which I've saved up for you. There are all these choice fruits, both new and old, which I've saved up for you, my beloved. She means I've been planning and preparing, and I've been holding on to things that I thought would make this time special. I've been saving up things that I thought would make this time special. And there's new things that I just have noticed I want to add to it. I'm thinking a lot about this. And this is her preparation, her effort in this is part of the way she shows her love. And of course, it represents the fact that she saved herself up for him. She's saying, I belong to you. I'm going to be yours. And I'm aiming everything I've got towards this time when we can enjoy ourselves together. And so that's sort of the picture. All right. So for human love, this is pretty obvious. It's a good picture of our own romantic getaway. It's a good picture of the kinds of things that we can do to make those things special and the romantic meaning that all that has for us. I wanted to think a little bit more about what does this mean for our relationship with God? And it got me thinking about something just sort of personal for us as a church. Jason has been asking us to ask, how's your soul? And notice that sometimes in the middle of all our busyness and even our spiritual business, even our ministry, we can get so caught up in the work that we're doing that we don't cultivate our relationship with God. And so this kind of special romantic getaway is important in human terms for love. There's a place where people have to get away and get alone and just be with each other. But in the same thing, I think that points to a deep human need. We need this kind of thing. And so God knows we need it with him as well. Sometimes what we need is to take times of rest alone with God. And we need to slow down and get away and just be with God. Now, this can be 5 minutes or 15 minutes at the beginning of the day. It can be a conference or a retreat or something over a weekend. It can be a sabbatical like Jason took over 3 months. It can be all sorts of different times and lengths of time, and each one has its value. I was thinking about things that have been particularly important for me in my life, and that's that occasionally I get a half a day or a day alone with the Lord, and those have turned out to be really important for my spiritual walk. Everybody's different, and God has us all in different places. Not everybody can take a half a day or a day alone with the Lord. But I just want to ask you to think for yourself, when do you get times of rest alone with God? And what makes it work and what doesn't make it work? And what does it mean for you to really build those into your life? And so I want to think about that in terms of this passage just a little bit. So I'm going to go back through those 5 things I pointed out and think about them a little bit in our relationship with God. First of all, the woman takes the initiative in this passage. So that's interesting because up till now, almost every time I've looked at something in Song of Solomon, I focused on God's role. I focused on God's goodness, God's love for us, God's desire for us. But this is the first place in the book that we see such a strong focus on the woman taking the initiative towards the man. So here I want to focus correspondingly, not on God's love for us and God's goodness for us, although that's always at the heart of it all, but on the fact that we're responding to God. What do I do when I want to get alone with God and bring myself to him and seek him in prayer and in worship? What does that mean for me? And I started thinking about the importance of our taking initiative in our walk with God. And the first thing it made me think of is all those places where Jesus encourages faith in those that actively seek him. He seems to really be almost tickled by the fact that people sought him out to be healed or to find out more about him. Here's some quick verses. You can look them up later if you'd like. One of them is a woman who came to him for healing. And he kind of rebuffed her a little bit. She was a Gentile. He said, I didn't come for the Gentiles. But she accepted with humility what he said and said, but still, even if dogs get crumbs that fall from the master's table, she says, I still need something. And he says, your faith has saved you. What he liked was that she had the faith to keep persisting. It showed that she really thought he had the answers. She really thought she needed him, and she was really seeking him. And Jesus is always pleased when he finds that. Luke 8 is another woman who was pressing through the crowds and touched the hem of his garment and was healed. And he stopped and said, I felt power go out from me. Who did that? And she came forward afraid. And he said, no, your faith has saved you. He liked the fact that she had pressed forward enough to come to him. In Matthew 7 through 11, he teaches, he says, ask, seek, and knock. He says, everybody who asks receives, everybody who seeks finds, and everybody who knocks, the door will be opened. And he gives a parable of a father, and he says, you even aren't perfect people. You're evil sometimes, and yet your children come to you, and you know that you give good gifts to them. You don't give them bad things when they ask for your help. You help them. So how much more will your Heavenly Father delight to respond to you when you come to him for help and come to him for, in this case, for fellowship or worship? So Jesus encourages the kind of faith that actively seeks him. And yet, God always draws us first. 3 more verses you can look up if you'd like. John 6, Jesus simply says, no one comes to me unless the Father draws him. Hebrews 12 says that Jesus is the author and perfecter of our faith. And Philippians 2, 12 and 13 says that when we will and do what God wants, it's God who has worked within us to do those things. So we come to God and seek God actively because he drew us. The woman responds to the man here because he's already talked to her. He's already taken the initiative with her. So even though I say the woman takes the initiative, in a spiritual sense, we never truly take the initiative with God. It's always because of what God has done. So when I come to God in prayer, when I come to God in worship, and I say I'm coming because I want to take the initiative and seek you out, there's a part of me that says, even that is from you. Even that is because you've started it, because you've created it, because you're drawing me in your heart. Second, the chronology. Remember that she spent a lot of time here getting ready. Let's go out in the village. And then I prepared these things. I've saved them up. So there's an aspect of getting ready, which I think can be important for our time with God. Sometimes I struggle a lot with corporate worship on Sunday mornings. Sometimes it's hard for me to find meaning in it. And one of the things that occasionally God reminds me is that I should perhaps spend more time in the morning before worship, getting ready for worship. Maybe I shouldn't just be rushing around at home trying to get ready and then just rush into church and then rush into the sanctuary and quickly we do the greeting with everybody and then boom, let's start worshiping. Maybe what I need to do is take half an hour ahead of time and go somewhere on my own and just spend some time sort of preparing my heart before the worship, since that's difficult for me. Sometimes I do that. When I do, it's much better. A lot of times I don't. But I do know that on these days when I spend an extended time with the Lord, that first 30 minutes is kind of a time of preparation, to kind of drawing near and close it and sort of settling my heart down and settling my mind down and remembering where I am and whose presence I'm in and just getting ready for it. And I think there's a place where we have to do that. When Jason went on his sabbatical, I don't remember whether he said something about this, but I'm sure that the first few days were just a matter of disengaging from all the stuff that was worrying him and distracting him and being able to really get into the presence of God. Let's see. And then once they get time together, she wants this to be an unhurried time. Let's go out. Let's look at the garden. Let's look at the blooming of it's just an unhurried, unrushed, leisurely time. And the same thing is true. I find that when I'm too full of busyness and too full of anxiety and too full of distractions, it's hard to settle down and be quiet and spend time with God. There's a reason that God talks about the Sabbath being a day of rest. It's because we're letting go of all the busyness we've gotten hooked up to and attached to and connected to and almost addicted to let ourselves just get quiet and slow down and just be with God is so important for these kinds of times, whether it's 5 minutes in the morning or a week or whatever it is. The space, the environment makes a difference. We have to get away for a while from the world's pressures. This reminds me of the verse in Luke where Jesus says, one of the things that keeps the word from bearing fruit in our lives is the thorns and thistles. It says people who are that we get choked with the worries and riches and pleasures of the world. everything is going on around us, and it's both worrisome and pleasurable. We're excited about it, we're worried about it, we're afraid of it, we're looking forward to it. All those things get in the way, and we don't notice the work that the Word is trying to do in our hearts. We don't notice the things that God is trying to do for us. So sometimes, isn't it funny how sometimes just getting to a different space makes a difference? Entering the sanctuary makes a difference. Going on a retreat or to a conference makes a difference just because we get away. Spending time. It's the funniest thing. When I had just been saved a few years and I was in college, I had an unsaved roommate, and I tried to have quiet times every day in my room, and it was distracting and difficult because my unsaved roommate was there. And I always felt, well, Jesus says, when you pray, just go into your closet. I felt guilty that it bothered me at all. I was like, this shouldn't matter who's here or who's there. I mean, why am I worried about this? I should just have a quiet time. And I struggled with having good quiet times all year. And around about March or something, somebody suggested to me, well, why don't you just leave the room to have them? And I kind of felt like that was cheating. I shouldn't have to leave the room to have them. And I prayed about it a little bit, and the Holy Spirit basically said, what are you talking about? If it's easier for you to spend time with me, just leave. And so that's what I started doing. I started having my quiet times out on the grassy field in front of our dorm. It was early in the morning. Nobody was out there. It was very quiet, very private. It was just me and God. And it was so much easier. And I remember sort of laughing and thinking, wow, this was so simple. The solution was so simple. And it never occurred to me to just leave the space I was in and get into another space, and it would be simpler. So sometimes it's just getting somewhere else that makes a difference. That makes things simpler for us. And then there's the let us see. She says, let us see. I love the fact that she's open to what will happen. And in the same way, when I come before God, it's increasingly important to me that I come open to what God will do, but not demanding a certain experience. Not saying I have to feel this way, or I have to have this happen, or this has to go on. And most important, it's important for me, recently, I've been thinking every time I come to seek God for an extended time, I'm starting to say to God, God, I want to see the God who is. I want to see who you really are, not who I want. I remember hearing this in a men's conference several years ago at harvest time. Somebody said, there's the God we want, and there's the God who is. Our lives change when we begin to seek the God who is, instead of the God we want. I know what I want God to be like. I know what I want him to say, what I want him to do, how I want him to bless, where I want him to act, but that's not who I need. I don't need the God in my head that's built up out of my imagination and my desires. I want the God who's really there. I want the God who's real. I want what he's going to do, not what the God I imagined was going to do, how he's going to bless or challenge or whatever he's going to do, not the one that I just imagined. Now, he's often so much better than the one I imagine, but this is what I want. And for me, every time I'm trying to spend time with the Lord, this is kind of a decision that can be helpful for me to make. God, I'm not seeking the God I'm imagining. I'm seeking whoever you really are. You're the one I want to understand and see. So surprise me. Show me something different. Show me something I didn't expect. And let us see what is going on. And then fifth, she said, which I've saved up for you. Again, she had things both old and new, which she's saved up for this. And I find when I spend some extended time with the Lord, it helps if I can bring everything I've been saving up in my life up till now and sort of lay it all before God. In fact, I have a little kind of ritual's too strong. It's not nearly that organized. I have a kind of thing I do if I'm going to spend several hours with the Lord. I start in the first 20 minutes and I make 3 lists. This makes it sound much more organized than it is. It's much more haphazard than this. But looking back on it, I realized that in my haphazardness, I make 3 lists. I list the desires I have. This is what I'm really hoping for as I spend time with you today. This is what I'm afraid of. This is what I'm looking forward to. This is what I'm sort of itching to see spiritually, my spiritual desires. Secondly, I list my trials. This is what I've been going through. This is where I've been failing as a Christian. This is where I'm frustrated and don't know what to do with. This is where I'm feeling defeated. And third of all, I list the verses and the things God's been showing me. And I feel like I bring all that out on the table. I actually literally will make a list on a piece of paper or on a computer file or on a whiteboard if I'm in a classroom somewhere, and I'll get it all out there. And then I'll say, here's my list, God. Now I want to see what you have for me. Might be nothing here, but it somehow helps for me to bring into the presence of God everything in my life at that point. All the things I'm wanting, all the things I'm afraid of, all the things that he's been showing me and the things I've been struggling and defeated by, all the things that I've been learning and that he's been showing me in scripture and that I've heard from various sermons and so on. And I bring everything I've got. That's saving up all those fruits, both old and new, to hang around the door. That's preparing the time ahead of time. I've been preparing. Now let me sort of give it all to God and say, here it is. I bring my whole self to the encounter and say, now speak to me, show me whatever you need to, bring me deeper into your presence, quiet my mind and my spirit and my heart, and just draw me close to you. And so that may or may not be helpful for you, but I wanted to share a little bit some of those things and how they sort of connected for me with what's going on here in the Song of Solomon. Good. See you later.